Hello again, thanks for choosing us. My name is Ernest Menu. Now, Joy News is learning that a joint security operation led by the National Petroleum Authority has impounded a vessel carrying 1 million litres of adulterated diesel smuggled into the country worth about 10 million Ghana cedis. Now, Joy News understands officials have been left alarmed at the likely involvement of a senior NPP element. We'll bring you details shortly. But the vessel was reportedly seized in a joint operation by the Ghana Maritime Authority, the Ghana Navy, the National Security, and of course the National Petroleum Authority after it illegally entered the waters of Ghana in January 2021. Now, the vessel as well is said to be non-seaworthy. In a strange twist of events, a player in the industry, Humano Energy, brought a suit against one Clement Alexander at the Tema High Court B, claiming that he owed him. Now, let's get some more details on this, the rest of the story. NPA Communications Manager Abdul Kudus joins us via Zoom with some more detail. Mr. Kudus, thank you so much for joining us. So, first of all, when did the NPA become aware of this incident?
Thank you very much. Let me say good evening to you, good evening to your cherished viewers. As I said on a sister station earlier this evening, the information actually came to my notice, and if I say my notice, I'm referring to the communications wing of the authority a couple of days ago, suggesting a certain complicity on the part of NPA and some people who wanted to illegally bring some products into the country. So I immediately got in touch with the relevant departments to be brought up to speed on what exactly the issues were and what I needed to know, given the anticipation that, like we're doing this evening, the media will certainly, when they pick it up, they would come asking questions, so I'll be able to respond. It is then that my information was, my attention was drawn to how it got into Ghana and how it got impounded by the collaboration of the state institutions responsible for issues of this nature. Because when it has to do with our territorial waters, we have a lot of institutions that come into play, including the National Petroleum Authority, to work at safeguarding whatever that comes into our system. So when the information was given to me, suggests that, in fact, so into your narrative, you mentioned January 2021. The information is that the 2021 has to do with the processes that were being followed in court that were to the blind side of the National Petroleum Authority. But the product was actually impounded in January 2022. Okay. So as at the latter part of 2021, there was supposed to be a certain court case among two parties. At that time, this particular product was not impounded. So after it was impounded and we needed to conduct our investigation, determine who was behind the product, get the conclusion on it and determine the way forward. Then we heard the issue in court, and that a certain judgment was actually given in default against somebody who we are later told is even deceased. Okay. And that the product is supposed to be the product is supposed to belong to that deceased person, and that the court has granted ownership of the product to Humano Energy, and then Humano has set up a process to have it auctioned to defray its debt. We are seized with whatever that would have been happening between Humano and the deceased person who is supposed to be the party in court. What is of interest is that by the Constitution of Ghana and the act that establishes the National Petroleum Authority, we are mandated to first of all license you to bring a product into Ghana. When you bring the product by our license, we are again mandated to determine the quality and suitability of it for the market. And when we are satisfied with all of this, then you can now get into the market with the product. But per our record, we're convinced that we never license the vessel to bring such product into the country. And our preliminary investigation has actually determined that the product is not of the required standard of specification that it needed to meet before it could be brought into the country.
Okay, so you impounded this, product, the vessel and the product. Someone came forward to say that the owner of the vessel owes him, and there's a judgment to auction this product and use the proceeds to defray the debt. Now, at this point, the NPA was involved. How then did you proceed? Because you are now being accused of interfering with the court process.
Okay, so like I said, all of these things happen on our blind side. Because ordinarily, you would have expected that the NPA would have been playing a party in all of these court processes, because, like I stated from the beginning, the Act actually mandates us to take custody of anything contraband relating to fuel. And once the determination was made by us, and we impounded that vessel and determined the product not to be worthy of our market, we were of the view that if anything at all was going on in court, we probably would have been brought in to either assist in the determination of the appropriateness of the product to be given to human energy who is suing or not. But we never had this. And like I said earlier on your sister station, the security agencies that actually got involved in all of this. And my information is even that there was an initial intel about the movement of the vessel. And because the appropriateness or the authority behind it was not established, there was a certain surveillance put on it until it got into our waters, and then the confiscation was done.
So, Mr. Kudus, what becomes of the product now? I mean, this was supposed to be, per the court's decision, auctioned and, the proceeds used to defray the costs per the court's order. Now the NPA, we understand, interfered with that process. Where is the product as we speak? Has it moved from the Takoradi Harbour where it was docked, and where is it now?
Okay, so my briefing is that we are currently getting it evacuated to a safer place. Obviously, because we still are convinced in our mandate that we are doing the right, and we've impounded the vehicle. And there is an elaborate processes to determine where the next action should be after the investigation is concluded. At this stage, we've not concluded with the investigation. And as and when the investigation is concluded, there is a committee that determines what should be done with a seized product. Should it be given to the refinery for a further processing? Should it actually be auctioned like the court tried to do or did? Or should it actually be given to the security agencies if it's actually tested to be of quality for them to use in any form or shape? But that determination has not been done yet because we've not gotten there yet. It is still in the process to get to the committee to then now take the action. We are at the investigation stage trying to determine the source of the product, who is behind the product, then the next line of action can actually be taken.
So what is the assurance to viewers that this will not end up at the fuel pumps? Because once it's been evacuated from the Takoradi Harbour where it was initially docked, in transit, anything at all could happen. So what is the assurance that I may not end up buying this?
I get the apprehension. The assurance obviously is in the fact that we never slept on our job and we've gotten this thing impounded. And now that we are evacuating it against all forces that are actually panning out of court, it actually should be putting a certain confidence in the general public that we are up to our task and we would not relent until we get the right thing to be done, at least in the larger interest of the consuming public.
Thank you very much. That's Abdul Kudus. He speaks for the National Petroleum Authority. And we're learning now that the NPA has been sued for contempt of court by one Acquah. Now, Acquah is the former Central Regional Vice Chairman of the NPP. Court correspondent Joseph Akable joins me via Zoom with details of that particular writ. Joseph, first of all, tell us about the basis for the contempt case filed against officials of the NPA and the basis for invoking the powers of the court in this regard.
And so in terms of the named officials of the NPA, there is Perry Okujeto, who is a deputy CEO at the NPA. There's also David Kanga, who works at the NPA. There are also some officials, two of them who work with the Naval Command. They have also been named in this particular process, asking that they be punished for committing contempt of court. And the antecedent that gives rise to this particular legal action stems from the case that you made reference to, the Humano Energy versus Alex Clements case. Now, it is the contention of Mr. Ewusi that in January 2022, on the 26th of January, they secured a court order in their favor, which permitted them to go and search for properties to satisfy a debt. And so he was named as an auctioneer, according to him, to carry out the task of identifying the property and attaching them and proceeding to auction same to satisfy the debt. Now, they say that in the course of searching for the property, they identified the said petroleum products which were on board a particular vessel as belonging to the individual against whom they were to enforce a judgment against. And so they went through the court processes, and he says they got the order to auction the said properties, and the auction was completed, according to him, in accordance with the court orders, only for them to discover sometime in June, that's a couple of days ago, actually, that the NPA.
It appears we've lost the link to my colleague Joseph Acquah, but essentially the point he was making was that at this point they had discovered that the NPA had interfered with the process. Joseph, we lost you briefly.
Yes, and so they found out that the NPA had filed for a stay of execution of the court process. So Mr. Ewusi says he filed a document in opposition to that report.
Well, it appears we're having challenges with that connection to court correspondent Joseph Acquah. But Mr. Acquah, who is the former Central Regional Vice Chairman of the NPP, is suing officials of the NPA and, of course, the Naval Command in Takoradi as well for interfering with this auction directed by the court to allow him defray the cost. Joseph, if you can just wrap up on the documents you've been studying.
And so I was just making a point that the NPA filed for a stay of execution, that is to halt the said auction that had taken place and to give effect to it. And so Mr. Ewusi says he filed documents to explain his side of this.
So we lost Joseph there, but that is the crux of the story that we brought to you. The NPA has impounded the 1 million litres of diesel that it says is off spec, and there have been court processes challenging the NPA's action in that regard. We are following more of this. We'll bring you in our subsequent bulletins, but you can read the details on myjoyonline.com. Let's shift our attention